Costas.
Good afternoon. Can I invite still the speakers who are missing up here to join me? Costas. Please come in, we will slowly start. Find your seats. I know it's a bit crowded. All right, we will start, and I hope other people will slowly maybe still join, whoever needs to, wants to. Good afternoon. And welcome to this session. Thanks everybody for joining, and I'm quite impressed with the numbers. I mean, I did not expect that the room will be actually completely full and packed. I have no clue how many are there online, but very pleased to see you all. And also special thanks to the speakers who are here with me and will share some, I think, very relevant insights for all of us. Maybe a quick reminder about this session. What is it about? I guess you know, but nevertheless, it's good to remind ourselves. So what we will do is we will present, or not me, but the speakers here next to me will present the state of the art of EOSC Core and plans for its evolution. But what also I think it's very interesting is to see a little bit and depict the EOSC Federation model and highlight how research communities can participate in EOSC through thematic, be it national, be it regional or institutional initiatives. So for the agenda, we will first do the presentations, 15 minutes each, and towards the end, or after all the presentations are finished, we will then take questions and answers, be it from the room or online, and my dear speakers will participate, will be gladly to help you and reply some. Maybe to start with, here just next to me, on my left, is Mark Dietrich from EOSC Future, and I would invite him to present the latest state of play of the EOSC platform. Mark?
Okay, thank you, Dejan. I'm Mark Dietrich. I'm with EGI Foundation. I'm a senior advisor there. I've been working with the EOSC Future project for some while, helping primarily with the EOSC profiles, which is part of the interoperability framework, as well as helping to manage the release of software through our release process periodically by the month, by a couple of months. So I'm going to describe our understanding of where the EOSC Future technical capabilities exist, and ask some questions about where we might go going into the future, from the future. That's kind of weird. I guess we'll go beyond. We're going to go from the future into beyond, into the far future. So let's go to the next slide, please. Oh, I should be clicking myself like a grown-up person. There we go. Okay, what does it say? I might have to stand up and look over. Sally, would you mind? Yeah. We have to go forward. Now it's not working. They say that falling in love. There we go. The starting point. So, core versus exchange. So this is a concept that has been kicking around in EOSC for some while, and so let's explore exactly what it means in the context of EOSC Future. So first, I'd like to clarify the actual resources, the data, the services, the training materials, etc. They come from the research infrastructures, from the communities themselves. So they're not held inside EOSC. They're pointed to from the exchange. Okay, so the home communities, the place where they come from, they remain responsible and accountable for those assets and their services. So down at the bottom, we have this blue box, and that's where we point to these resources as they are held by, as they are provided by the various home or source provider services. The EOSC Core services, which are the things in the dotted sort of soft-shouldered rectangle that have green boxes inside, these are the core services as they're defined in EOSC Future. Their purpose is to enable interoperability, to enable findability, accessibility, and fundamentally the ability for the pieces to work together. So that's the objective of the core as it stands in EOSC Future. One thing that's inside the core, but there's also an activity that's outside of this, is the interoperability framework. So inside the core, there is a thing called the EOSC Interoperability Framework Registry. So that's a database. And it points to interoperability framework guidelines, which are descriptions of what the interfaces are, how you use certain things, whether they can be both referring to the core services, so how you would integrate with, for example, the core monitoring service or the core help desk service. They can also allow for exchange to be interoperable. So you may be having a piece of data in a certain format, and then it could be interoperable with a Jupyter notebook, which is designed to accept data in a certain format and to produce some output, which in turn would be conforming to some kind of protocol. So that's what the interoperability framework is. The part that's not drawn here is kind of the soft work of the interoperability framework activity, where we have a process for communities to submit interoperability framework guidelines and then to get them approved and then to have them added to the registry. So this is our starting point. This is the core versus the exchange as it exists inside EOSC Future today. And one last thing I'd like to point out is this EOSC Federated AAI. This is the identity management system, which allows, when various source communities decide to federate with the federated AAI, and they basically work out a number of processes so that the credentials that might be provided by a certain community are recognized across the whole federated AAI. That happens in this green box. So it's kind of next to the core, if you will. So I'd like to go to the next slide, which, if I'm able to press this button, look at that. So EOSC Future might be considered as the initial minimum viable EOSC, which has been referred to in many documents and discussed at some length in various EOSC documents by the association. So the first point to make is that integrating the core function in EOSC Future was challenging. So a lot of the providers, the organizations that created service management tools, help desk, order management, the web portal, various aspects of the resource catalog, all these came from different providers. So our objective in Future was to bring them together so that they begin to work together to allow for a seamless capability that can be extended to all the participants, all the resources that appear in the EOSC Exchange. So in the end, it did establish the specification for the EOSC procurement. If you look at the procurement documents, you'll in fact see a lot of the same words that were found in a lot of the deliverables from EOSC Future. Not exactly the same. There are special, I'm not going to get into the details, but there's a lot of overlap. But more work is needed. So we within EOSC Future are very aware of the gaps, the shortfalls, the limits to what we can do, and the challenges that we've attempted to overcome within the EOSC Future project. So I am not saying that EOSC Future is perfect. I'm certainly acknowledging that more work is needed. Diego will talk about some of that. I'm going to ask questions that are going to sort of help us frame the direction, assuming we can go back to the slides. That's not under my control, he said to no one in particular. So the work becomes more complex as we think about the requirements of a federated, a multi-home, a multi-node architecture. So that's where we're going to go. So now, May I have the next slide, please? Is that under your control? Okay. Yes, please. Do you know anybody who can help with that?
No, but I can show your presentation to you.
Oh, you're in charge? I didn't know you were in charge. Awesome. Oh. No, it's not showing. Here we go. Okay, here we go.
it's walking.
There we go. See? That worked. Okay, so we've talked a little bit about the node. This has come up this morning. It's been in a discussion in a couple of meetings. There were some meetings that the EOSC Association has organized recently with the mandated organizations as well as ESFRI to say, what is this node? How does it relate? What are we going to talk about? So I'm going to ask questions about that. So this picture here, there's nothing new on this picture. It's just organized differently. So I put some things up at the top that I have tentatively labeled as Federation services, and tentatively have identified the EOSC Federated AAI as a good example of a Federation service, something that we would want to work in all of the nodes, if there are such things as nodes. Also, the EOSC Interoperability Framework Registry, the thing that was originally inside the core, that's probably going to be useful for all the nodes. It would be nice to be able to define an interface that would work regardless of what node you're in. And then tentatively, I throw out the PID service, the persistent identifier service, as potentially something that would be useful to operate in a consistent, common way across the whole EOSC Federation. So in this dashed rectangle, which I'm marking as EOSC node core services, I'm just adding the word node. We still have the service management system for the node. We have monitoring, we have help desk, we have order management, we have accounting. We have web portal capabilities, we have the resource catalog. So all those things were on the diagram that was just preceding this, and they're still here. And then again, down at the bottom, we have the EOSC node, the exchange that's in the node. And then just to make it a little more clear, I highlight that community resources are outside of the exchange. In other words, we point to the resources. We do not hold them inside the exchange, we point to them, okay? So, one point, this last point I think is the important one here, is that for the monitoring system to work on an exchange service, that exchange service needs to be onboarded to the exchange. Otherwise, the monitoring service doesn't know it exists, and it cannot do its job. And its job is to determine whether it's up and running, whether it's working reliably. Similarly, we have accounting, which is keeping track of who's using the service. We have the help desk. Everybody has a pretty good idea of what a help desk does. Order management manages requests for consumable services, so CPUs, cores, storage, et cetera. And the other pieces, I think people have just a basic catalog and then the presentation of that catalog on the web. So you have the same set of capabilities, but there's a rather tight connection between what the core does and things being present in the exchange. In other words, these pieces don't really work too well unless the exchange is connected to it. And separately, we have the Federation services up above. So if we can go, everybody think good thoughts about this clicker. I think, there we go. It's the time delay, it's the problem. Is this mine? Oh, thank you. So I'm going to generalize that picture. Again, not much has changed from this point to the other one. I'm generalizing the node core services. One thing that we have seen in some of the paperwork that, for example, Peter Zaghetti has shared is that different nodes can make different choices about the technology that they will use for their core. That's a choice. So we cannot specify that certain technology will be used for the help desk, for order management, for a resource catalog, for a web portal. There may be different choices node to node. We still have the node exchange. And just to make things more clear, put in some pretty pictures about all the different services and resources and data and assets and so on that might be pointed to by the node exchange. And up above, we have the same PID, federated AAI, and IF registry. And it's important to understand that existing research communities have in many cases fulfilled many of their functions, the core functions that I'm describing here. They have their own solutions. So again, there's no mandated technical approach being proposed here. We also have simple being discussed as a possible future solution to some of these challenges. It's a future thing. My estimate, based on the time frames, is that we probably won't see simple technology available for use until 2025, but we need to think about it. We need to plan for it. And then, again, repeating, we have this diversity and complexity of resources coming from different communities, but the key is interoperability. So moving on to extend our picture. 3, 2, oh, there we go. So how will the many nodes work together? So this is the key question of federation. So here, a node-based architecture recognizes that different communities are different. Now, I saw a slide this morning that worked a little bit different than slides we'd seen before, so I think we need to, keep our minds open to different solutions. But I think the point is there are going to be different nodes, there are going to be different sets of resources, and to make them all work together, we may need some additional federation services, such as a registry of EOSC nodes. In other words, how do I jump from one to the next? I may need just a simple directory that says we have 5 of them, and here's the URL for each one, or the endpoint for each one. The other point is that within each set of exchanges, there are specific assets. As of right now, these assets have been onboarded to this exchange by the providers of these assets, these data, these resources. That's the way it works today and future. In other words, it's an explicit process. It's not a magic process. There's an explicit step taken by the provider to onboard their resources to the exchange. So there isn't harvesting except for the OpenAIRE data assets, which operate somewhat differently. So I'm not really talking about the OpenAIRE harvesting. And then the other thing that is important, we probably need additional governance instruments to manage all of this complexity. So rules of participation. There may be a rules of participation that works for everything. There may be rules of participation that are unique to a specific node or a specific set of resources. There may be different acceptable use policies. There may be different access policies. So there's some multiplication of these governance instruments that we need to be aware of. And in fact, even for the federation services, there probably needs to be somebody who's going to manage that architecture, manage the rules of participation for the federation services, and going to make some decisions about how they might work together. So I'm just throwing this out, our ideas. None of this has been written down. I'm kind of trying to fill in the blanks a little bit, and perhaps we'll get some feedback here in this room. Whoops. There we go. So what are we really trying to do? We really want the users to be able to find the resources and to use them. All this stuff in the middle, it's garbage. It's just something in between the user and the resource. So what we want to make is it as easy as possible for the users to find any of these resources, and ideally for them to work together. So the details that are underneath this sort of transparent box are deliberately being clouded. We don't want to get hung up on those details. So how do we make this usability, this findability work? So how do we achieve interoperability? 3 major questions. User experience. Will the user experience of EOSC feel like going to a mall and then walking into different shops? Or is it going to be like one of those, I don't know, nameless online e-commerce sites that I'm sure every single one of you has used, where all these things are listed. And you can put a search term in and say anatomical. and get every product that has the word anatomical in it. And we don't know whether it's a book, or it's a learning aid, or it's a, God knows what. But the point is, it's a completely flat experience. So I've had this conversation. Where's Dan? Dan? I know you're here. Anyway, I've had this conversation with a couple of the clusters and the research infrastructures are saying, we feel like we're lost in EOSC Future. How do we retain our, identity? Thank you. How do we retain our identity? So that's the mall and the shops. Or how do we make it completely flat and open? That ensures global discoverability, but it also may reduce the usability. So that's one question. Second question is, if each node uses different technology, which is a possibility, how do we ensure core-to-core interoperability? Don't know. So maybe those are interoperability framework guidelines that are in the IF registry that help to make that possible. There may be other mechanisms that make that possible. I don't know. That's something we need to look at. Maybe simple will solve it all for us. I don't know. And then lastly, if we want resources onboarded to different nodes to be able to work together, how does that work? Hopefully the IF registry operating as a federation service will achieve that, but there may be other things we have to do. And one of the things we have to work on is, if I want to take this service, and I want it to run on that computer, how do I do that? How do I orchestrate that? How do I create that execution environment? How do we get this data to go over there and achieve some science result? So these are the challenges that we need to think about and the questions we need to start to answer. And I think, so that's the summary. EOSC Future advanced the concept of EOSC. We delivered the first implementation of the minimum viable EOSC. The components of EOSC Future represent key capabilities for EOSC Federation services, and as well as an EOSC platform that could power multiple EOSC nodes, including the EU node. I think new Federation services will be needed to make this work. And new EOSC Core services will be needed. They need to provide for a seamless user experience. They need to allow for the different implementations of EOSC Core to work together in a seamless fashion, or effectively at least. And then finally, we want to allow the resources from different communities, nodes, clusters, call them what you will. We want them to be integratable and interoperable to provide and support useful research workflows. And with that, I'm done.
Thank you, Mark. Very, very interesting presentation. And I guess in the name of organizers, apologizes for slight problems with your remote control. Hope this will, it looks like now it gets better, like it started to get used to you, so maybe it will. Yeah. All right, we continue with our next guest here, Tomi Suominen, an IT architect at CSC and FAIR Core for EOSC coordinator, and he'll talk about EOSC Platform and how it could be extended further to support FAIR. Tomi.
Thank you. All right. The name of the project is Developing EOSC Core Components to Enable a Fair EOSC Ecosystem. And I think, as I read it, the presentation title, FAIR Core for EOSC, Extending the EOSC Platform to Support FAIR, is actually a synonym. So let's see if this works for me. No. Ah, first one. It likes me better.
Be fair, Mark, be fair.
So I'll go through this quickly. But we are today at month 16 of a 3-year project. So in November, we'll be halfway through. We are a research and innovation action. And that means that we are purely focusing on service development with very little else in the project. And it's also because we are developing quite a lot of new core components, so all of our effort goes into this development work. The call that this project answered picked from the SREA a particular set of challenges or gaps in the state of the art, and our project is very directly then trying to answer those gaps by developing new services. And these 9 services, the first one is the RD graph by OpenAIRE, and they are working on making the graph of research outputs and products more approachable to everyone. And this is, for example, by trying to use AI-based human language search into graph data. So they're trying to develop a way in which you can express in human language a query. Could you find me research outputs from the last 20 years that have been the most cited and are relevant to, I don't know, marine ecology? And then from the graph, it would try to pull those research outputs that correlate with the kind of verbal query. They also try to work on subgraphs from this very large graph for particular disciplines or groups. And in general, trying to kind of integrate it with the EOSC research catalog, so to kind of facilitate users of EOSC to find these different research outputs. Then we have the PID graph. The PID graph works on trying to essentially find more connections between the different research outputs to actually produce the graph to be more graphy, to have more connections. It also, both of these services make their graph freely available as a dump, but at the same time, they try to kind of work on development and standardization of these graph technologies, access to them. And then both of them also work on kind of impact-based search and citations. So which of the outputs in this graph of research products are more used than others, referred to more based on citations. And then we have the MSCR, the EOSC Metadata Schema and Crosswalk Registry, and I think this, Mark, is partially answering your little pictures here in the bottom, because what we are trying to do here is create a place where you can deposit metadata schemas. You can visually create crosswalks between metadata schemas. So if we have databases or information services that are providing research data, for example, then you can create crosswalks between metadata, the services and metadata schemas to allow actually transferring metadata or combining metadata from different services with each other. The crosswalks that we create there, they are issued PIDs. The different mappings that the crosswalks are composed of are issued PIDs. So these crosswalks can be then maintained by professional communities or versioned by individual researchers for particular research needs. So then we also manage the provenance of these crosswalks. And this is really a key service in kind of facilitating interoperability between different registries of data. But indeed, this focuses on the metadata schema, not the data conversions themselves, but the metadata conversions. I highlighted there some of the letters from FAIR, as that's the kind of topic of this session or the presentation, that the RD graph focuses more on the findability and accessibility, as does the PID graph, while the MSCR is more on the interoperability and facilitating reuse. Then we have the data type repository, and I see this behaves differently on this computer than mine. But the data type registry is a place where you can actually deposit data types. They are issued persistent identifiers, so PIDs. You can create composite data types composed of the primitive data types, and then these data types can be referred to in linked data. For example, in the metadata schema registry, where the different metadata elements can be typed here, so the types are transparently available as linked data. But also, for example, in the kernel information profiles of PID systems. Then we have the PID meta resolver. So this is intended to be a place that can resolve PIDs from all the different PID systems. So it tries to document or works on establishing kernel information profiles for the PID systems to actually provide metadata on the things that are behind the PID itself. So you could actually query the PID's metadata instead of directly resolving to the item behind the PID. Then we have the EOSC PID Policy Compliance Assessment Toolkit. So this service tries to quantify, or I should probably read it, encode, record, and query the compliance with the EOSC PID policy. So essentially what this means is it should be a place where you can insert the URL of your service, and it would kind of automatically try to quantify how EOSC PID policy compliant is this particular service. This is being worked on jointly by DANS and GRNet. Interesting way of showing this. The RAID, the Research Activity Identifier, developed at ARDC in Australia, so the Australian Research Data Council. This is a new PID type for minting PIDs for research activities. So it's not totally synonymous with projects, because projects might have a shorter duration than a broader activity. So example that the Australian colleague was showing is that there is an archaeological excavation that goes on for 20 years. They have lots of different grants that are funding the work. They have lots of publications, lots of people working on this. A lot of data sets are produced. Even maybe the physical finds might have PIDs and so forth and so on. So this becomes a large PID envelope that collects the information on what things are related to this particular project. And this is then, of course, optimal for the graphs, because this is a way to produce the graph information on how the different research objects are connected to each other. So this is a new PID type that we are launching for EOSC and Europe. Then we have the EOSC research software APIs and connectors. So essentially, Software Heritage has been developing this archive of source code. And it is expanding its efforts to try to harvest and collect more and more research source code, so that research source code would be an equivalent research object on the side of data and publications, and to actually preserve the functioning things that are used to make analysis on scientific papers, because, well, the reproducibility, for example. And so they also have Software Heritage intrinsic identifiers, the software kind of a PID, except it doesn't resolve. So it is a unique identifier, but it's not a resolving one, at least currently. So here they engage with a lot of new repositories to actually increase their harvest of software objects. And then we have finally the EOSC Software Heritage Mirror, which is the concrete archive of source code replicated for EOSC, which actually goes beyond the FAIR, in the sense that this actually is working to make the data available, not just making it accessible and possible to use if you manage to negotiate the terms of use, but it concretely makes the source code available. So that actually furthers even deeper goal there. Now, all of the components that we are working, the new core components that we are working to develop, they are planned to be integrated with EOSC. So we plan to have interoperability guidelines in the EOSC interoperability framework for each of the different components we are developing. We want to integrate these with, for example, the EOSC AAI. That is the first thing when you're developing a service. You need some kind of user access management. And later on, we'll see which ones are best integrated with the help desk, knowledge hub, training catalog, and so on. So this is work that needs to be done during our project. We see a lot of potential with actually integrating these core components, for example, with the marketplace. So when you are actually adding a new service, let's say a database to the service catalog, you could actually use the metadata schema and crosswalk registry to deposit the metadata schema of that service. So that means if you have several services with their metadata schemas deposited in the metadata schema and crosswalk registry, and then you can create crosswalks between these registries, you make actually the metadata between these services interoperable. So that's really a concrete output in which the EOSC interoperability can be furthered. We have 5 case studies through which we basically add value to these communities. So we have the social sciences and humanities represented by Clarin, and we have the climate change represented by DKRZ from Germany. We have the mathematics community, something that is somehow quite rarely engaged in these kind of things. This came through the fact that they have a lot of software and they have a very long-standing their own repositories for managing a lot of these things. So they have been actively working on these things for quite a long time. But they have been somehow separate and now they are pulled in. Additionally, we have the research information systems. So we have a lot of European countries have developed national research information systems, so CRISs, that integrate from different universities and research institutes on a national level, the information on the research performed in that country. And now we are looking at, with the examples of Finland, Greece, and the Netherlands, actually using these different core components and also the metadata schema and crosswalk registry to actually map their information models into the serif, the actually updated linked data serif, and then map that onto OpenAIRE's information model so that we actually can achieve interoperability and exchangeability of research information data between those services. And then finally, we have we don't have the EOSC service provider, so EUDAT essentially. So this is a data infrastructure, and they will adopt some of these components to facilitate exposing and enriching the research dataset information that they hold. For example, by utilizing the PID graph and the RD graph for connections that the dataset has to other research objects and exchanging this, passing it forward. Our project timeline, we are at month 16, so this is our internal timeline, and in 2 months we will release the beta versions of these components. They are very shaky still, like a Bambi getting up on its legs for the first time, but this is an important point for us because then we will use the case studies to start adopting these components and find all the things that are wrong with them. But then in 2025 we will have the final release of these components that we will then hopefully have in some way, shape or form integrated into the EOSC Core. And on this minimum viable EOSC timeline, we are basically taking place from 2022 to 2025. So we're in the phase of EOSC where it grows. Now, some challenges with deploying these new EOSC Core services. So our project is very much planned to develop EOSC Core components by design. This came from the call text, and this is our main mission. However, the EOSC platform is currently developed and operated by Future, and in Future's grant agreement, essentially, they didn't have the kind of obligation to take up new core components. So, of course, we were not able to forecast the future at the time when that was written, and that means that there's a kind of a lack of interoperability in a way in this, in a kind of a governance manner, in that there are no processes to onboard new core components onto the EOSC platform currently. And the EC is procuring the EC platform as a managed service. So the ownership of the platform is planned to change in the first quarter of next year. But this kind of poses some challenges because we don't have a clear governance on the EOSC Core portfolio. And with the transition to EC, there's no clear definition of what defines or justifies a service as a EOSC Core component or inclusion criteria. And so the handover of the EOSC platform to Future, from Future to the winners of the procurement is a point of changes and some, well, possibilities as well. Now, the core components we develop, they're actually really cool even kind of without EOSC. So they will produce benefits for communities that have a willingness to adopt these, whether they're integrated to EOSC or not. So they have value also as a standalone thing. But now, because we are basically developing these in the context of EOSC, people who want to adopt these components, they ask us, what's your sustainability plan? How are you funding the maintenance of these components? Because the more communities that adopt these, the more strategic they become. And we sometimes think that adopting software is cheap, but actually it costs really a lot of money for a research community to invest in integrating a service into its processes. So it's completely unacceptable that then the funding is cut and someone turns off the server or the cloud subscription. But so already, even though we are just barely developing these services, we are already facing the issue that users are looking at our basically concept note and trying to evaluate whether we want to adopt this or not. So for us, it's really vital to kind of develop clear and communicable service sustainability pathways so that we can actually convince the research communities that this is something you should adopt and it will be around. So,
Tommy, we are really tight on time.
And I think with that, I finished. So
excellent, excellent timing. Thanks a lot. Thanks, Tommy. Very insightful. We are running a little bit good 15 minutes late with the presentations, which means we are eating basically all the Q&A time. So I'd maybe ask the presenters to, if they can catch up a minute or two on each, we will gain some time then for fun questions.
I will try.
Thanks so much. So Diego Scartacci, Technical Solutions Lead at EGI. And you will present to us the next generation of the EOSC Core, correct?
Okay. Good afternoon, everybody. In this presentation, I'll give you some information of a new project that will start next year, EOSC Beyond. This is the project that will take care to innovate the current set of core services. As many of you know, the EOSC procurement will start to operate the EOSC node in the 2024. Anyway, it's essential to continue to innovate the core services for several reasons. First of all, the core services at the end is an IT system that needs to be continually enhanced, otherwise, as all the IT system, it will become obsolete very soon. And in addition, since we need to extend the core to include new capabilities that would allow to satisfy new requirements, new or old requirements from the researcher community that the current set of core services is not able to satisfy. This slide is introducing a bit of terminology. For the sake of time, I won't go through them, but this can remain for you for reference, since I'm aware there are also a lot of misunderstanding when we talk about all these components of EOSC. Maybe a reference that can help you. In general, what I want to say here is that EOSC Beyond will deliver an enhanced version of the EOSC platform. So while the EOSC procurement will operate the EOSC node, the new EOSC node, the EOSC Beyond will work to extend it with new capabilities according to the needs of the researchers. This slide summarizes the main objectives of the project. The project will start in the first of April of the next year, 2024, and it will last 3 years. It's coordinated by EGI, but also involve all the other main infrastructures like OpenAIRE, EUDAT, GEANT. It involves also technology provider with proven experience in developing service for EOSC and several research communities to validate our model. The first objective of the project is enabling a European network of pilot EOSC nodes. So the idea is to try to test and assess this new model is emerging, providing the technical tools that are needed to set up a network EOSC node. Then the project, in addition to this, will enhance the current core services. So we are talking about the ENVRI-FAIR Federation, the help desk, the resource catalog, adding new capabilities on top of them. In addition, the service will introduce new core services, in particular, the EOSC integration suite that will facilitate the integration of different data-driven and multidisciplinary tools in new solution, and the EOSC execution framework that will allow to deploy and execute on the fly scientific solution in the EOSC. To complement this, EOSC Beyond will also set up the EOSC Core Innovation Sandbox. This will be a pre-production environment for the EOSC platform. So it's a place where we can test and validate the EOSC Core component, we can test the integration, and in addition, test them to assess the quality before they move to production. And in addition, this innovation sandbox will be open to all the EOSC providers, so also research communities that are willing to deploy their service on EOSC. They can use the innovation sandbox to perform the integration and validate it before moving in production. Finally, EOSC Beyond will collaborate with the initiatives that are dealing with the data spaces to guarantee and to develop connectors to guarantee interoperability between EOSC and data space. Okay, this slide is about this concept, this idea of setting up this network of pilot EOSC node to validate this model. In this context, the EOSC Beyond will work to evolve the current EOSC Federation model that is based on the interface of the different core services Mark shown you earlier during the presentation of the EOSC platform, and to understand this with the interoperability guidelines and define a further enhanced set according to the new capabilities that will be developed. So the idea is that the service will offer the opportunity to use the core services that are currently in the EOSC platform as a blueprint for setting up regional thematic nodes. This will be done in two different manners, or using the core service as a service, so you can deploy an EOSC node using the technology delivered at the EOSC platform at the EU level in your EOSC node, and as a service, so without the need to deal with the operational infrastructure and so on. Or you can reuse the software, deploy the core services in your infrastructure to set up your regional EOSC node. But this is only a possibility. Other possibility is that you have already your core capabilities, you are using your technology for this. In such a case, the project will provide you with connectors that will facilitate the federation of your EOSC node in the EOSC Federation. As an example, I can tell you if you, for example, you have a DCAT catalog, we can deliver a connector that would allow the DCAT catalog to publish their items, their resources in the global EOSC resource catalog. We will work on it with some pilots. We have planned 6 pilots as a part of the project. We have 3 national pilots. We have here EOSC from NFDI that will run one of these. Then the other 2 will be from the Czech Republic and Southeast Europe, leveraging the experience of the NIFOS project, and 3 thematics: environment, health and food, and structural biology. Obviously, this is the minimum. Then there is the opportunity to set up more pilots. We'll be happy to do it. If the next slide arrives, okay. Okay, this is the same slide, but as you can see, I tried to highlight how the different EOSC nodes in this pilot network can be set up. We can have a node that is using custom technology, but it's integrating with the EOSC node to the EOSC Core adapters that implement the EOSC interoperability guideline for the EOSC Core services, while we can have other nodes like this one that are using EOSC node core service as a service, and so on. So we can have all the different scenarios, the different combination. The idea is that each community can make its choice and select the solution that best fit with the needs to set up a EOSC node. The idea is to offer a series of tools to make this easy to do from a technical point of view. Okay, waiting for the next slide. This is, okay, Mark shown you the current EOSC platform architecture. This is how the architecture will change thanks to the work that we have planned in EOSC Beyond. I have marked in green the components that already exist in the current EOSC platform, but that will be extended, enhanced during the EOSC Beyond project. And I marked in blue the new component. So we have the integration suite, the execution framework, and the EOSC Core Innovation Sandbox. Now, some few additional words on this new EOSC Core component that we will deploy during the EOSC Beyond project lifetime. It should come. Okay. I understood the secret. You have only to write, Mark. This slide is about the EOSC integration suite and execution framework. As it's zooming in this area, you can see the execution framework is made of two sub-services, an enhanced interoperability framework registry and deployment service, while the integration suite is a completely new component that is made of library that are adapters that would allow to interconnect services. We would have libraries for core services to facilitate the establishment of the EOSC non-network, but we will also have a library for EOSC Exchange services to facilitate and shorten the timeline to develop scientific application. The integration suite will be an open environment where also communities can upload their libraries to make this environment richer. The integration suite will be connected to the interoperability framework registry, since the libraries in the integration suite can be implementation of the interoperability interfaces that are described in the interoperability guidelines registered in the interoperability framework registry. I know it seems complex, but it's not so complex. The point is that we don't have anymore only the instruction to make service interoperable, but also the real implementation with library that would facilitate the integration with EOSC. So you don't need anymore to develop more code, but you can directly connect your services to the library. The interoperability framework registry will be enriched with configuration that are set of metadata that describe how to discover and access the services in a dynamic manner. Then it means, for example, a machine, a service can go in the catalog, find the services, getting the metadata to access the service, and access the service on the fly. So implementing the dynamic composability, the real dynamic composability that is not yet available in the current EOSC platform. Oh. As I told you before, the EOSC Core Innovation Sandbox is the third core service that we're introducing. In the EOSC Core Innovation Sandbox will be an infrastructure where we operate the TRL7 platform that will be delivered by EOSC Beyond, and where we can assess the development of the project, and then we can offer to third-party service provider to validate the integration with the EOSC Core service, in general with the EOSC production environment, before to move the production environment. And this also can act as a place to assess the services before we move to the EOSC production platform. I put in this slide this diagram that showcases the whole software lifecycle to, I would say, in a simplified manner, explain where EOSC Beyond will work and where the EOSC procurement will work. So Beyond will innovate, the EOSC procurement will operate the EOSC node. The two initiatives need to collaborate, and good outcome from EOSC Beyond may also be moved in EOSC procurement if considered enough mature. Few words about the interoperability with data space. As you know, EOSC is one data space, is data space for the research. So it's fundamental finding a way to work together with all the other data space. So EOSC Beyond will set up a collaboration with the data space support center and with the consortium that will win the simple procurement to guarantee interoperation with EOSC. And this will be done in a very practical manner, developing some pilots. We would like to start with some pilot around AI and data transfer. And also, we would like to have an active role in the open source community, the simple, that will be set up to create a simple middleware, to facilitate interoperation, the use of software, and implementing a co-design approach. This is the last slide, a summary. As I said, EOSC Beyond will deliver an enhanced version of the EOSC platform. This will be done innovating current EOSC Core services and developing 3 new EOSC Core services. EOSC Beyond also will validate the concept of EOSC node, establishing a network of pilot EOSC node. And finally, EOSC Beyond will work with the data space to ensure the interoperability between EOSC and the data space world. That's all from my side.
Thanks a lot, Diego. Lots of work ahead. So, and interesting times always, right? Next one, I would invite Sally Chambers, the director of DARIA EU, to present how thematic arrays and science clusters participate in the EOSC Federation. Sarah.
Great, thanks very much. And let's see if we can catch up some time so we can have some discussion. So I'm going to move the sort of shift gear a little bit, and we've talked a lot about architectures, and now we're going to go into what Mark referred to earlier, related to the EOSC Exchange. So we're really looking at it from the point of view of thematic research infrastructures and science clusters as groups of thematic research infrastructures as part of the broader EOSC Federation. And because I come from the social sciences and humanities, we'll focus a little bit from the SSH point of view. So, I'd like to just remind everybody about ESFRI, the European Strategy Forum for Research Infrastructures. And this is what we're dealing with, because we have, at the moment, 63 research infrastructures in the ESFRI network. 41 of those are operational and 22 emerging infrastructures. So here you can see all the different groups of infrastructures that we have. So there is a lot of work to go into the EOSC Exchange. So within the EOSC Future, we've been working together with what we're calling the science clusters. And here you can see the 5 science clusters: ENVRI-FAIR related to environmental sciences, EOSC-Life for life sciences, ESCAPE for astronomy and particle physics, PANOSC for the PAN community for materials, health, energy, and physics domains, and last but no means least, SSHOC for the social sciences and humanities. So if we think about these 63 infrastructures within EOSC Future, we've had 15 of these 63 actively participating in onboarding and integrating services into the EOSC Exchange. So, here we have something called the SSHOC Open Marketplace, or the Social Sciences and Humanities Open Marketplace. So this is one of the core outcomes of the SSHOC project. And here we've just listed here, so we have Clarin, we have CESTA, and we have DARIA as 3 of those infrastructures within the SSHOC cluster. And all of the infrastructures provide tools, service, data set, publications, training, and within the SSHOC marketplace, which is a kind of contextualized catalog of all these things for our specific domain, we have around about 6,500 different services, data sets, and sources that could potentially be onboarded and integrated into EOSC. So this is just a bit of an example. So now if we look at the same data from the other side, so if you were able to click on this, then you can see each of these 3 infrastructures as one of many infrastructures in the social sciences and humanities, how they've onboarded their services and data sources into EOSC. So here, if we think back, I'm not going to try and go back to the slides, but if we think of our marketplace, the SSH Open Marketplace, that itself has been onboarded onto EOSC itself. And here, the outlining has gone a bit strange, but there is actually, within SSHOC, you can actually, within EOSC, you can actually find all of the different services and data sources from a particular cluster with this particular tag. And here you can see the metadata here. This is one of the services from the SSHOC cluster. So now we're talking about the sort of EOSC Federation, and we've been talking about nodes. Here is again a different view. So here you can see some examples of national social science and humanities resources. So if you think of each of the different infrastructures, they also have their national nodes. And here, for example, we've got the text grid repository that may come back later in the presentations as one of the DARIA Germany sources. That has also been onboarded here into the SSH. So you can see this has got a lot of granularity, both at the cluster level, the individual research infrastructures, and this is an example of one particular source from a particular national infrastructure. So just giving you a bit about, everyone's talked about onboarding and integration. I just wanted to sort of show you this a little bit behind the hood. So here I'm logged into what is called the provider's dashboard with my DARIA EU account. And here you can see I have been validated, or our organization has been validated as an EOSC provider. So after that, I can start onboarding and integrating some of the resources. So here you can see, so we've got 2 very nice menus on here. So onboarding, that is putting stuff into EOSC for the first time. And here you can see the DARIA campus, which is our training resources, and the SSH Open Marketplace have been both onboarded. In the second menu, you can see once we're onboarded, the added value of EOSC is that we can start integrating it with some of the other core services. So I'm just going to give you a couple of examples. So our colleagues from CESTA have been working with our help desk team at the back there. I can see them in the room, and they have fully integrated used the EOSC help desk and integrated it into their research infrastructure, so every CESTA resource is making a use of the EOSC help desk. From the Clarin, I think on my next slide, yep. Here we have the Virtual Collections Registry, which is one of the Clarin Research Infrastructure's core services. Here you can see it is part of SSHOC, and here you can see the monitoring. So 100% and 100%, it shows to the user this is a really high quality resource. And if you click on that, you can actually get some more information about the reliability and availability of these sources. Then on the next slide, I think it's coming, and it was a bit too quick. And then on the next slide, we have something called Accounting for Research Products. And this is really quite cool. So here we've got the SSHOC Legacy booklet, which is one of the key publications from the SSHOC project. And here it's been onboarded to the EOSC. And you can see all of the accounting for research products. So you can see how many downloads and how many views of that particular resource onboarded into EOSC, thanks to the fact we are integrated with this, with EOSC here as well. So just to quickly try and wrap up. Very quickly, we've talked a lot about AAI, and this is absolutely essential. So it's really important, and sometimes there are various different AAI providers within the cluster, and we make sure that we interoperate with the whole EOSC Federation. And this is just to really wrap this up now. I think this is really, really crucial. So each of the infrastructures, each of the research infrastructures, each of the clusters really need to strategically think how they're going to engage in EOSC. So just to give you an example here, we have a kind of services and data portfolio for SSHOC as a whole, and then each of the infrastructures, and here we have an example from Daria, have all of the services. So this is, for example, from Daria, Belgium. We've got the services within Daria, Belgium that we're putting into SSHOC and then into EOSC. We really need to think carefully about how we're managing this in a strategic way. And luckily, in the next slide, we have a new project called OSCARS. This is the Open Science Clusters Action for Research and Society. I'm not sure you can see it in the screen, but this is where we're going to start thinking about, at a cross-cluster level, how to increase the maturity of the clusters, how to think about these services and data portfolios, and most interestingly for our research infrastructures, these cascading grants that are going to help facilitate, encourage open science in the different domains. And finally, one of the core outcomes from our work package, at least, of EOSC Future, this EOSC service providers maturity model. So here we've got 7 steps going from getting a basic awareness of EOSC through onboarding your first services and data, integrating with core services, and for the next stage, composing your own workflows. So that's another real added value. Once your services and data sources are in EOSC, you can start interconnecting. And I'll leave it there. Thanks very much.
Thanks very much, Sally. Very concrete. Also, thanks for contributing to the time catch-up. Just before we go to the next session, can I ask everybody just to stand up?
Jump now, please.
Shake a hand of your neighbor. Okay, sit down. It's just to wake you up. Everybody's in shock now, very well. Then I would invite, and I don't know exactly how you have organized yourself. I have you under the same point. I don't know who will present, but Kostas Koumantairos. There are 2 presentations. So now, Kostas, it's your turn. Head of Unit for Strategy and Proposals of the Directorate of European Infrastructure and Projects at GRNet. Please.
Okay. Can you hear me? Yes. Okay. I'll try to go a bit fast in the sense that we need to make time, and I don't think that the technical details of the slides I have are really important. The important message I want to give, and I start only with that, is that regional or thematic or national nodes, as NIFOS was before even the node concept existed, help because they are there. They are local. right? And whatever somebody needs, it needs support and needs to find someone and say, hey, this doesn't work, what do I do? That's the problem, right? And this is where NIFOS was really imperative and working. In essence, we created what we call the pre-production environment. The pre-production environment includes all the components that Mark showed from the EOSC Future in the previous versions of what the versions when NIFOS was operational. The components that Beyond will evolve afterwards. It has an AI, it has help desk, it has monitoring, it has its own, let's say, service portfolio management. We call it service portfolio management. It's now the resource catalog we have in EOSC Future, in EOSC in general. For us, it was that. We followed also the similar processes that OpenAIRE does for research projects, because at that point where NIFOS was operational, there was no option to onboard research products into EOSC. This is a recent activity that is now facilitated. I need to clarify that NIFOS ended quite some time ago, about 6 months ago, I think. I wasn't really directly involved in NIFOS. I was oversighting the integration of NIFOS with EOSC. That was my job. This is why I'm doing this presentation. As you can see, we had all the components, right? The key concept, as I said, is that we were local. We allowed services to mature. We were helping them to write all the policies, all the technical documentation which is required in order to fulfill the rules of participation. We tried, I will pass through the slides on this, the technical information. The AI is perhaps the only important one because it's part of the EOSC Federation itself, EOSC AI Federation itself, which is a bit of, let's say, the super cloud of AI services. Monitoring exactly the same. And I'll go to this part, which is the onboarding process. In essence, what NIFOS did, it took the rules of participation that the EOSC Association published at that point and said, okay, those are very vague. Let's see what the EOSC Future is designing. Okay, those are very vague. And we tried to make it a bit more, let's say, how you implement this in a regional, national manner, where it's easier because you're a small community. It's easier to agree. It's easier to find common ground, right? Both the EOSC Future had to agree with all the partners that had what is let's say, the procedures they need to follow. EOSC Association had an even, let's say, bigger task, making all the members agree that the rules of participation are these, and they need to follow these guidelines, and need to apply to every different resource out there, be that an instrument, be that a service, be whatever. NIFOS had a smaller, easier job to do. Right? We have these services, we know which they are, we know who are the providers. What do we need to make them sure that they fulfill whatever the rules of participation of EOSC Future says, fulfill what the guidelines of the task force rules of participation says and will be saying in the future, as much we can foresee, and see how much we can improve on that based on that we have better control of the services and the resources out there. What they decided, it was a lot stricter ideas. For example, the need for a privacy policy, which was made by GDPR later on a requirement. It was, I think, last year, or earlier last year, or wasn't it this year, Mark, that we finally managed in the EOSC level to say that privacy policy, which is a legal requirement for the last 5 years, needs to be available, right? But there's a reason why that's the case. Writing a privacy policy for a technical guy is a difficult thing. Right? You need to involve lawyers, you need to involve different people. This implies the simplest fact, right? Technology is easy, or the technology part is easy, it's doable for us at least. I'm a technological guy, I'm a software engineer by heart, right? Going and doing the design, let's say, legal documents that describe something means I need to go to the legal department, explain to them what the hell I need to do, what my service does, and they give me a blessing. And then you have new, let's say, roles, which is the data protection officer. In general, when you ask them something, they will say no. Move on. You cannot do that. Yes, but I need to, and I'm doing it. Please help. This is what NIFOS did, right? We try to create, let's say, the guidelines, wiki, build a community which will help bring all the policies let's say, to be up to date, mature the service enough so that they can fulfill, use the pre-production environment, which included monitoring, help desk, AI, and everything, so they learn how to actually operate in a professional manner a service, so it's mature enough, and all of them now, or at least the majority of them, are currently now being listed in EOSC via the integration we have with our own tool, which is called Agora, which is the service portfolio management tool I was talking about. And that is the key value. What I want to mention is that you may have the best technology out there. If you don't have local support to help someone to guide them, to be the evangelist of this, lack of a better word, to persuade them to join EOSC for some reason or to onboard things, you will never get there. If you go now to the marketplace or to the provider's portal and ask for how many services they have in total, the answer is something like 400. As you can see, I think I have it in one of the next slides. Here's what NIFOS did in 3 years, right? 37 repositories, 31 thematic services, 21 generic services, 58 providers. Ask how many providers EOSC has, and EOSC has done EOSC Hub, EOSC Future, and now it's going to procurement. There it's more like 300 kind of providers. 60 of those are NIFOS, just for so you can understand the concept. It's really, really important that we have this added value, right? That you have local people working and supporting the communities. This is where, as Sally said, the social communities, or the social sciences, they have their own established network now, right? Why do we need to change that? They know how they need to contact Sally, for example, for their IA to publish something. Why do they need to go to EOSC? I think we need to start thinking that nodes should be just facilitators. Mark, I think, showed a slide where he did completely, let's say, clouded the middle part and said, end users, services. This is what we want. We don't care about the middle part. We do need, GNet needs to be acknowledged for the service that we provide. That I guess it needs to be the same. We need to have this acknowledgement thing, but this is our need, not the user's need. Right? And this is where we need to find this balance. This is the idea how that we need to evolve. And I think Beyond, as Diego showed earlier, helps on that. Tommy showed to us a bit of new features and new core components that need to be included, which helps on creating a new environment. That is all from me. If you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer either now or afterwards.
Thank you, Kostas. It's true that technology may be simple, but I don't think it's easy. Or it's, I'm not sure it's the easy part. I think it's equally difficult, but I think that it's really good to recognize that there's way beyond technology in this story. Jörg, Director of NFDI, Jörg Surevetter, please, the floor is yours.
Hi, I'm Jörg. I have the honor and the pleasure to be the final presentation and have no time. So I have to.
Yeah, maybe on that before you
firework.
go. Yeah, maybe we will extend it 5-10 minutes. Okay. So I mean, to really be able to answer some questions. So.
Okay, I will burn my firework a bit quicker. I will report on the German National Research Data Infrastructure called NFDI. It's a large-scale endeavor where, well, fairly spoken, over 1,000 people at the moment are engaged. I just come from our conference, the CORDI conference, which is the first conference on research data infrastructure. It took place last week in Karlsruhe, and we welcomed over 700 people, which we thought is quite amazing. Hi, Björn. It was really cool. So let us remind quickly, why are we sitting here? What are we working on? So this is what came to my mind when I read the famous or infamous FAIR paper. Who of you has read it? Okay, so last week we had Mark Wilkinson, who is the first co-author of the paper, and he gave a brilliant talk. So I thought, okay, this really evolved and emerged. He had so many new things to tell. But when I read the paper first, my first thought was quite simple. More and more research results are achieved by using already existing research data. And this sounds so intuitive. But if you look at how research was conducted over the past 400, 600, 800 years, It is so much more different from then. For me, it's still hard to believe that times are changing. And this is what we are working on. It's a revolution. It's not just an evolution, it's a revolution. And still, we need efforts to make all of the data available. So I'm really pleased if we have slides saying we now have 6,475 more data sets. Yeah, but do we have the right one for my research question? Still an unsolved task. So we are still in the area of getting a better access according to the FAIR principles to all the unlocked data who are out there. It's getting better and better and better every day. This is good news, but we still have lots of stuff before us. And this was the starting point for the national initiative. So what is behind it? We are an association, quite similar to EOSC. We have 261 association members at the moment. So this is universities, Fraunhofer, Helmholtz, all Helmholtz centers, by the way, lots of Leibniz institutes, lots of extra university institutes, so across research in whole Germany. We have so-called consortia. We have 26 of them, and they are focused on a domain. So one consortium can be up to 80 organizations focusing on a domain, like NFDI for culture, or NFDI for biodiversity, or Mathwerk, material sciences, or NFDI for chemistry. And we have 26 of them. So we really are widespread across research over all disciplines, you could say. And we have cross-cutting activities, so-called sections, in which we address things like infrastructure, metadata, also PIDs, of course. AI is an important aspect to us. So we want to have single IDM, identity management as well. But also things like ELSA topics, so ethical, legal, and social aspects, because access to research data almost always involves legal issues. So therefore, we have a cross-cutting activity there as well. The idea in Germany was to start in waves. So we had 3 rounds of funding schemes, you could say. So these are all the consortia, which I just named. And starting in 2020, the first wave was financed. Then in 2021, the second wave was financed. And starting as of this year, the third wave has been financed. And remember, every single of this one can be between 15 and 80 organizations working on this particular topic. Now, my job is to organize all of them, to have a better pace, to do some kind of moderation, and to facilitate the collaboration in between all these different disciplines. So it's really cool because I have to talk all the different languages. I talk to nature sciences, I talk to social sciences, I talk to life sciences people. They all come together, share their thoughts, share their ideas, and they all start working together. We try to visualize what we are doing. And this is a map which is produced on top of Wikidata. So we eat our own dog food and we provide data about our network on Wikidata. So you can do a Sparkle query and then visualize it. So this is basically the consortia like NFDI for culture, NFDI for memory, Text Plus, here's the reference to the DARIA people as well, NFDI for Earth, and the connections in between them. Because we have some organizations who are engaged in more than one consortium, and those are very important to us because they are kind of bridges from a network theory point of view. So they bridge from one consortium and from one community into another consortium and into another community. And this is very important to us. We want to use these bridges to establish one NFDI. To give you a bit more insight in the sections. So the first one is section metadata. It's about standardization of metadata, terminologies, and provenance. And of course, this is all of these topics are well known here. We talk about common infrastructures, and this reminds me a lot of what is going on in Federation and Core. And of course, it's one of our duties as well to align activities on the national level with activities on the European level. We have a section on training and education. This should be mentioned as well. So we harmonize our education materials and we work on standardized courses. And the key thing is to train the trainers. So we always want to multiply things. So we are not interested in teaching individuals, but rather we want to train the people who are training other peoples. Our newest section is industry engagement, because we found that many things we cannot do without industry. At the same time, we don't want to be consumed from them or by them. So we thought it's a good idea to talk to them on the same level of eye height, do you say this in English? On the same level, and try to come up with ideas in a joint space. Last but not least, and this is fairly new, a funding stream has been opened in the third wave, which wasn't there before. And that was the possibility to fund cross-cutting activities in a so-called base consortium. This is really something, I could talk an hour about this. This is a little miracle that it happened. So the German funding ministry opened up the funding stream in January. The time to deliver a proposal was 2 months later. All consortia, actually all of the 26 consortia joined, wrote a proposal and said, we want to do this base for NFDI stuff. Within 2 months, they wrote the proposal, they delivered, it was successfully evaluated, and it got funded. So now we have a funding stream on cross-cutting activities. This is a huge picture. I'm very happy to talk about this also in coffee breaks whenever you meet me. This is something really cool, and there will be many links to what is ongoing here at EOSC. Our idea of being a national node is we want to be a bridge between the scientific communities and the technical infrastructure. This is really our core aim, what we want to be. We want to combine, frankly spoken, bottom up, which I think is NFDI, and yeah, I'm sorry to say, but EOSC for me is top down. And we have to bridge the gap in between bottom up and top down activities. Otherwise, we won't succeed, frankly spoken, on the European level. So we need to ensure that there's a strong connectivity between these two approaches. And we want to represent the member states with equal rights of co-determination and decision-making for all matters in the context of EOSC. This is something spoken into the direction of the European Commission. I really think we need this, and I don't see it really cool, really strong at the moment. So this was my little firework. I hope to catch up some time. Please don't hesitate to contact me. I'm very open to speak about this at any time. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jörg. Very good to hear how the national approaches are there and how this is evolving. All right, so I propose to have, if that is okay with you, of course, maybe 5 to 10 minutes questions and answers max. It will eat a bit of the coffee time, but I mean, I hope you will still have enough to rake yourself and take care of yourself after. So, any questions?
Thank you very much for the presentations. I have a question to clarify something and also to get an answer from the point of view of a repository operator, because colleagues from EGI talked about the EOSC, EOSC node, EOSC Exchange node, and the terminology was not really overlapping between the slides. And does it mean that with the ideas of the nodes or exchange nodes, the complexity of EOSC is somehow outsourced to the nodes? And from the perspective of the repository operator, does it mean that I cannot participate in the EOSC Exchange directly, but I have to become part of a node? Or is it somehow opened?
It's up to you. This is the answer. Right? There is no clear definition of what the node is yet. It's a discussion. There's also a panel tomorrow about this, and one conference, sorry, not a panel, about this. But in general, there is not going to be, okay, EC has a really strict view that the EOSC node is whatever, the EOSC EU node, as they call it, will be the, whatever the procurement, let's say, will provide. That will be the, let's say, the seed of resources and the core that is provided there. That's one part of the equation. That doesn't mean that you won't be able, as soon as if you fulfill the rules of participation as they will evolve, if your repository fulfills that, you won't be able to join directly in the central node or the whatever you own. But as I described before, there is quite some value if you go via your thematic or regional or national node because of the local support you're going to get from it. Right? And this is important because you need to bear in mind that it's not about I will onboard my repository, my data source, my service now, and I will be done with it. The whole concept is that I onboard it to get more clients, to get more services, more users, to interact with, to open it up to more people. And I need to keep on updating, being always, and say, keep it updated also, and the profile I have for that, be updated there. You're going to need support for that. You need someone to nudge you, please update.
That's fine, but then as we talk about the nodes, is the EC node like a central node and other nodes depend on it, or is it equally important? So is it like a centralized architecture or parallel?
Maybe I can, I will not try, I'm from the Commission, I didn't present myself, I'm Dan Voschik, but I will not try to answer that particularly because I think this is still very open discussion at the moment. There will be a particular session on that, but I think that there is no idea, I'm not sure, and maybe at this point it's very difficult to predict. Will there be a central node or not? It's not very clear probably. It's something also to some extent to community design. Okay.
If I can add on that, I would consider the first node not to be the second one, to be just the glue between things.
Any other questions? Yes.
Yeah, so, well, thank you for the presentations. I'm a bit I'm not part of all those projects, but I've been trying to register my provider and services in the portal. I had several issues in the past, like my provider is not available on my account, and so I have to ask. So I was wondering what is the status and what is the stability of what you're proposing. I think it's very interesting, but if every time I go there I don't find my thing because some internal software changed and the metadata was not passed, or there was some issues and it was not fixed. Every time I had to contact the help desk for things that should be there. So yeah, so I think we should really streamline so that people can onboard more easily.
So I think the quick answer is your concerns are fair, with a lowercase f-a-i-r. I'm sorry for that. Stability is something we're working on. One of the things that I do in EOSC Future is manage the release process, and we are working progressively to improve these kinds of problems. So we're aware of them, but we don't have quick fixes necessarily, but we're working to both improve the platform and also improve the stability. So it's not a single, shall I say, stably defined thing that we're working bugs out of. We're also improving and adding. And so that does create a little bit of instability as we move along. But that's something we're working to improve. We will continue to do that even in the extension period for EOSC Future. And the intent is that when this is handed over as part of the procurement, assuming the same technology is used, that the procurement organization, the winning bidder, will be responsible for those kinds of stability issues and resolving those. So I apologize for your experience, and we are aware of it, and we're working to improve that. So thank you.
Thank you. There's another hand down there.
Yeah, my name is Francisca de Jong, Claire and Eric, and also SSHOC, of course. I would like to return to the previous question about whether or not the complexity of providing services is now outsourced to the nodes or the external nodes rather than anything else. I think it's good to underline that the existing repositories, organizations that maintain them, etc., they have a life of their own, they have a future of their own, they have a responsibility of their own. And for them, and I'm now talking for Clarin, the added value of EOSC is that there is more glue, that there are clear guidelines for interoperability, or at least they're getting clearer, and that we will gain visibility for what we have to offer through the evolution in the landscape that we are now discussing. So I don't think it's offloading responsibility from EOSC to those nodes, because they do have responsibility and a life and a future of their own. That's what I would like to underline. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm not sure if there's anybody who wants to comment on that. Yeah, it's not necessarily a question. All right.
Absolutely right. Whoever has responsibility now will continue to have responsibility tomorrow. That won't change. What we are aiming for is to facilitate and to help or reduce the burden of this responsibility. Nothing more than that, right? I would like to improve the environment so that you don't see the problems that it was mentioned by the other person before. That you have local support, that you have the ability to fix problems without opening yet another ticket to the help desk, and repeatedly doing that. We want to improve the quality of the service the end user is getting in the end. And we want to hide this complexity, regardless of who will be responsible for it. Be the regional thematic node, be the central node, be the God Almighty, I don't know. It doesn't matter. The end user needs to understand that they get what they're asking for easily. That's the value we need to add. I can mention also that GEANT has published a paper today about the EOS nodes that is describing exactly that. The notion that nodes need to add value. Otherwise, they're not useful to anybody.
Maybe Kostas can also add that the node is an opportunity. You can use it. You can deploy your node as a thematic or geographical initiatives, but you can continue to register, to onboard your resources in the what is now EOSC Platform and is operated by EOSC Future, and what will be the EOSC node that will be operated by the procurement action. The important point is that if you comply with the rules of participation and inclusion criteria of this node.
All right, thank you a lot. So I will then here, I saw an online question, but it was around, a lot around the what kind of a node. I will leave this question for whoever asks it to maybe keep it for the session on the nodes. Here I would take just 4 takeaways for myself. I think a lot has been learned, but as we are learning, we discover new challenges, and I think that as understanding is evolving, we start to crystallize what and how EOSC should be. I think that it's important to not undermine the sustainability. If you all invest into developing things that they have a place to live their life and continue to evolve. I think another takeaway for me was that point of going beyond technical solutions, support, legal support, and administrative support, organizational questions are equally important. Without that, we will not actually deliver the value. And then just to answer this question of responsibility or value or kind of outsourcing the responsibility to the nodes, I think that we need to agree on who lets go of what. Maybe some nodes can let go of something and can be managed centrally, and some central things can let go of something and can be managed locally. But it has to be clear at the end. I think until we get that clarity, it will be always a little bit shaky. And it will come, but it will take a bit of time to get there. Thanks everybody for participating, and I wish you a nice continuation.